being here today. We show you registered as Bill Longley on behalf of the Texas Municipal League and that you will be testifying neutral.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You may begin.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Longley. I'm General Counsel with the Texas Municipal League. I want to give you a little bit of background on TML. We're a statewide membership association of 1,175 member cities. Just for reference of that number, 975 cities of our members have populations of less than 10,000. So all but 200 are under 10,000 population. That goes from the far end of the scale with Houston at 2.3 million down to our smallest city, which is the city of Quintana at 26 residents. So it's a very big organization. Almost every city in the state is included. We provide legal assistance, we put on training programs, and we provide legislative information to all of our cities. So that's a little background on us. I might as well kind of jump in on the conversation that was just being had. There have been a number of bills in recent sessions that would help kind of streamline the permitting process, the plat review process, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to work with the Home Builders Association, work with this committee on some of those changes. Shot clock was put into place in 2019, 30-day shot clock for plat, subdivision plat turnarounds, plans. So we have that in place. There's a 45-day shot clock for building permits. We also have now, after last session, a third-party review. If some of those deadlines are missed, then cities, the applicant can go to a third-party review. So we've appreciated the chance to get to work on some of those things to try to alleviate some of the concerns that exist out there, and also are grateful to have be able to cooperate with other associations in doing that. So that's a big issue for us. Zoning is the other one that when I started at TML 17 years ago, you almost never saw a bill that addressed the zoning statute. It just wasn't something that got filed a lot, and that's changing pretty significantly now. That's part of a nationwide trend towards more density, and Texas is no exception to that. We've seen pushes from state legislatures, pushes from independent city councils across the country to opt into greater density, to go towards more inclusive zoning classifications, limitations on lot sizes, elimination of parking minimums. You'll see all of those bills this session, and we look forward to being able to work with y'all on those bills. I know that Texans for Reasonable Solutions is here. And we've been grateful to them that we've been able to collaborate with them, and that cities have also been able to provide their feedback for some of that legislation.
Representative Davis, you have a question?
Yeah, yes, sir. May I ask something you just mentioned?
Yes.
Yeah.
You talked about these 30 days and 45-day.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the enforcement mechanism? The cities don't meet those. So tell me, is there an enforcement mechanism to get them to, in fact, adhere to those deadlines?
Sure. There is, with regard to plat applications, there's an automatic granting of those applications if a city doesn't turn it around in time. Now, there are opportunities for cities to work with applicants to extend the time frame for those if they need to do that.
Okay, so what if the applicant has met that and the city is not responding? What's the mechanism to get the city to respond in a timely manner?
Well,
that's what I mean in terms of the enforcement of that.
Sure. My recollection is if you were to dig into 212 of the local government code, and I can go in and follow up on this, there is, if the city misses its deadline, then the plat application is considered to be automatically approved after a certain time frame. The other, and I don't know that I'd necessarily call this enforcement, but the third-party review standards that passed last session in HB 14 also say, look, if you miss a deadline, if you miss, you don't get things turned around in time, then that applicant can go and get a third-party review.
So does the applicant have to go to court? They're now forced to go into court to get the city to meet their deadlines? Is that what we're talking about? When you're saying they can get enforcement that way, so they actually have to pursue it through legal?
If the city didn't issue the certificate because they missed the deadline, then sure, I think that mandamus might be a option to go, and the statute is fairly clear, is my recollection.
So therein is the problem. Are we gonna have the applicants having to go to lawsuits to get the cities to perform? Is there some other way that we could do that so we wouldn't be suggesting to developers and business folks who are trying to do these kinds of projects? By the way, you got to have your lawyer on retainer because they're going to miss the deadline and they got to come in with that to get it enforced. That's what I was wondering. Is there some automatic penalties that the city would get if, in fact, they don't meet their deadlines without the person having to go to legal action?
I don't think there are automatic penalties. Again, I think there's the automatic granting of it, but if for whatever reason the city didn't comply with the statute and grant that, I think the statute says issue a certificate, then I think it would be a court proceeding that they'd have to pursue. But to your point, I mean, if there are things within Chapter 212 where you can modify that and have further incentives to make sure that those are turned around quickly, then we'd be open to working with the committee on that.
So I'd like to visit with this because I've had people come to me saying they can't get the city to move on stuff. So
Sure.
Thank you, Ms.
And we've heard that too, Representative Davis. And I would just, I pointed out the legislation from 2019, follow-up legislation last session that we worked on to help streamline the process to allow cities to go to administrative review instead of having to wait for P&Z, which is you're waiting for 30 days there often anyway. And so there have been a number of tweaks to the statute. And again, if it's something that we can work with the committee on, work with stakeholders on, we'd be happy to participate in that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What if we switch the burden and the developer, if they met the deadline, they get to go and force the city to have to go and get a mandamus to stop it?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we could look at and communicate with y'all with and talk to our member cities about, but that may be one way to modify the statute, sure.
Okay, any other questions?
If I could just make another point or two. On the zoning issue, our ask of the committee would be to continue supporting as much as possible the ability of local officials to respond to the needs of their constituents, to promote land use policies that make sense for each individual community. And this is, again, is looking at our membership kind of holistically. If you have a growing city, a developing city that wants to move towards greater density, move towards lower lot sizes, accessory dwelling units, et cetera, we support that. We want them to be incentivized to be able to do that, and many cities have. I mean, Austin is a pretty good example of a city that just recently had a comprehensive rewrite of their zoning code. At the same time, if there's a suburban city, a rural city, the citizens within that city show up to P&Z, show up to council meetings, and they don't necessarily prioritize density in those cities the way we might see in more urban or first-ring suburban areas, then we support those cities' decision-making ability too, and local officials to respond to their residents. The only other issue I would mention is on the ETJ. Mr. Norman mentioned that briefly. The ETJ has been, and when I say ETJ, I'm referring to the extraterritorial jurisdiction around cities, kind of this buffer zone where cities have limited regulatory authority. We've seen a lot of action with the ETJ, dating back really to the end of unilateral annexation in 2017 and 2019. And last session, a bill passed, Senate Bill 2038, that allows folks that live in the ETJ, property owners in the ETJ, to remove themselves from a city's ETJ, meaning they wouldn't be subject to the limited authority that cities have, maybe primarily for this committee's purposes, subdivision, platting authority that cities might have in the ETJ, but there's other, authority related to provision of water, sewer, utilities. We think that bill maybe swung the pendulum a little too far in our view, and there have been at least 3 really helpful bills, good bills filed by members of both parties in the House that would, I think, recalibrate that balance a little bit to give to respect property rights, but at the same time, if cities have significant investments in their ETJ and property is subject to a development agreement or in very close proximity to perhaps even surrounded by the city limits, then there would be limitations on the ability to remove themselves. We've had cities that a lot of issues have come up with this because some cities have granted hundreds of these petitions, and then now the questions start about, well, who provides services to these areas, water, sewer, which we talked a little bit about water services earlier.